All right, guys, we've got an interesting video coming up today, and that is the different coil sizes. Does a bigger coil truly have depth advantage over a smaller coil? We're going to go through the M15, M11, and M9 coils to see how much variation over a silver US half dollar, right here, Walking Liberty, and a silver USA Mercury dime at 11 inches. Now, this is the best I can do, guys. We've got, the targets are not going to change. They've been in the ground. They're not, they're the standard. But we do have environmental, aspects here that can change, EMI, et cetera, et cetera. So the attempt is we're going to run all the coils, same exact setting, same sensitivity, look at the big target versus the little target, and go from there. Now, I want to say this. However this works out here, this is super, super mild ground. And the bigger coils having more depth has already been disproved in the wet sand on a saltwater beach. I've showed this in a video here recently. You guys can go check it out. It's right here or right here. Go check that video out, and I'm going to show you how the big coils fall short in the wet salt sand due to the salt content in the bigger area of the coil seeing more salt. And you can see it very clearly in that video. And I've seen that over different brands and multiple detectors with bigger coils versus smaller coils down in the wet salt sand. Now, this brings us to the question, this is mild ground. And how does this change in mineralized ground? Well, I can't answer that question for you, but I can say this right here. There should be a vast difference. If there's a big advantage of using a bigger coil, it should have more depth. It should really show right here in my mild soil. So enough of my rambling on. You guys comment below what you think about this, and let's get to testing. Stay tuned. All right, guys. We've got the 12-inch silver US half dollar. This block is 4 inches tall, just up for reference, 12 inches deep. Smacks it, lift the coil up about 4 inches. So what are we talking with 11-inch coil there? 14, 15 inches of depth on that. Let's switch over to the 9-inch coil. We'll be right back. All right, guys, we're going to go with the 9-inch coil. All right, guys, same exact settings, 9-inch coil. Lift the coil up. Hold on, let me get this right here. You see the 4-inch block? You see how the 9-inch coil is hitting it at that depth. Let's put the 15-inch coil on. All right, guys, so there is some factors that I can't help, and we see something going on with this big coil that was not going on with the 11 and the 9. We see EMI affecting this big coil more in this testing scenario. We're going to test it at 21. We may have to lower it down to get it calmed down, but let's look at 12 inches. Let's try another noise cancel down at the ground. Let's long press it. It's coming up on 0. All right, let's run it again. Let's lower it down to 20, see if we can get it calmed down. Zero seems to be the channel. I mean, you guys see that, right? Well, let's talk about it. Smacks it, lift the coil up about 4 inches. This is one of my more tougher targets in my test garden. This is a dime buried at about 11 inches, a silver dime. Check it out. See the coil height? All right, guys, we're going to get the 11-inch coil, put it on. That's at 20. I tried at 21. Look at the height. Are we going to see a drastic difference with this big coil? Well, stay tuned. Same settings. You guys tell me, you see a drastic difference for that big coil depth-wise over to 11? Let's get to 9. You know, let's look at this particular target, the 11-inch dime. Let's check it again on a auto noise cancel. That's a 9-inch coil. You guys be the judge. But there's one other factor about this, and I'm going to just demo it. You remember how those two bigger coils was kind of getting hit with the EMI a little bit? Well, this is very subjective here, but I can run this coil a little bit hotter. And here's an example. Here's the stability. It's actually more stable, and it's running on a 23 instead of a 21. So let's talk about it. All right, guys, so just to be clear, there are other variables that come into that. There is, you know, how much can you shift the coil forward and backwards? That is a test that we'll be doing here in the near future. How much ground coverage do you gain with the bigger coil at depth? You know, being able to shift the coil. Can you shift the coil half and still hit it? You know, these are all questions that need to be answered, but this is just a raw depth test of basically taking the coil, putting it centered up over the target and seeing which one hits it. Now, like I said, that video right here shows it on the beach, and it shows that a big coil in wet salt sand has a disadvantage, and I do believe that that is to the size of the coil and it's seeing the salt minerals. But you know, there's no absolutes in metal detecting, but I guess, you know, at the end of the day, I had to ask myself, well, you know, in this mild dirt, how much depth advantage do we see? How much, you know, coverage advantage do we see? Well, those are questions that will have to be answered in future videos. But you guys comment below, what do you think about just raw depth advantages? Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.